What is going on, everybody? You got Matty here, and that was a nice and soft intro, because usually when I make videos on other people's channels, I tend to hurt their unsuspecting subscribers' ears, and that is not what I'm trying to do. So, nice and soft, you know, not going to hurt anyone's ears. In fact, it probably soothes the ear, so that's what I'm going for, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. So, my name is Matty, and I will be uploading a new series on the TTM channel known as either Building with Brolic or Building with the Elite. It depends on, you know, what name we end up coming up with. The name will probably be in the title, you know, the one that we decide to come up with. But for now, I guess those are probably the two choices, and I'm not exactly sure which one it's going to be. So that is why I don't want to just go ahead and say one and the title says something else. So the concept of this series is a draft league based team building guide, perhaps one where I will go over a, in my opinion, highly in-depth and intricate team building process that could really help new and aspiring players, or even experienced players who just want new perspectives on things, to really just get a better grip on team building for league matches, because that's something that I think personally that I excel in more than I guess other aspects, or I guess the most out of the other aspects of my game in terms of like playing and drafting. I would say my building is probably the most advanced of the three, so that is why I feel like this is a good fit for me and something that I would definitely love to do, because I enjoy it. I really love team building for the format, and I think that I have a lot to offer. So yeah, definitely hope you guys enjoy these upcoming videos. So we will get right into it, because if you guys are not familiar with who I am in the NPL, the league run by Jolt, and I am currently, as I'm recording this now, holding a 10-1 record in the National Pokeball League, which most people consider to be, not most people, but a lot of people, even from other leagues, consider this to be the most competitive draft league out there. So that's really saying something, I guess, you know, only having one loss in a league that competitive. So that's pretty cool. We only have one game left of the regular season, but we already clinched the first place spot in our conference of the playoffs. So that is definitely cool. And yeah, we've had a very strong season. So there are definitely a lot of games I have here where I can show you guys exactly what I did to prep for them, and what you know, how it worked, how, you know, certain things played out, and if things played out the way I wanted them to, etc., etc. And that is exactly what I plan to do here. As for the first episode, I'm going back to what I believe was week 7 against a good friend of mine known as Rizzy Pow. If you're a big fan of the draft league community, you probably know who he is, because he's a very accomplished player. He is the coach of the Phoenix Sunflora over here, and he probably had one of, if not the most difficult team for me to try to counter, because it just really has tons of answers and huge threats that my team cannot handle very well. So to beat him meant I would need to prep incredibly well. So just taking a look at the team, I'm over here as the St. Louis Reshiram's, and he's over here as the Phoenix Sunflora. I know we're kind of spread out, but thankfully to Aberforth's stat sheet, because this isn't the actual original document. The original document has the updates to the teams. For example, I have a Rotomosh over Slowbro now. I have a Dragalge over Magnezone, and Riz made a bunch of transactions towards the end of the season. So at this time, these were pretty much our original teams, except I have Tauros over Druddigon, which I originally drafted. So going into the thought process of the team, it's just so scary, because he's got Mega Medicham and Bisharp, which is a ridiculously threatening core. Mega Medicham outspeeds or speed ties with, you know, Mega Gardevoir, but also has priority for Mega Gardevoir, even if I do perhaps, you know, have the same amount of speed as him. If we happen to speed tie, he has both Fake Out and Bullet Punch, which, if I'm an offensive set, could pretty much 2-hit KO me. And he only gets outsped by things like Infernape, like Tauros, Gengar, and Aselgor, some of which aren't really good against his team. Like Aselgor really does not fit against his team, as he has some really nice checks in potential Assault Vest Bisharp. It can't do too much to Scolipede. It cannot do much to a Moongoose at all. It doesn't really touch Diancie too well. I mean, HP Steel is 4 times super effective, but like a bulky Diancie could still eat those up and 1-hit KO back. What else? Assault Vest Armaldo checks it pretty well too, I would imagine. And then Torn T is another great check. So, as Jellison also is. So, yeah, it really doesn't do too much in this match. Now, that's one of the Pokemon that I had to eliminate kind of right off the bat, because it just doesn't look to be a great fit here. So, further going into the team, we have Magnezone, which has been pretty useful up until this point in the season, but the steel type that I'd be interested in trapping would be Bisharp, but the thing is, Riz loves Choice Scarf Bisharp. That I knew up until that point from watching his games, and also Bisharp has priority Sucker Punch, so even if I did run a Scarf Magnezone that could creep, like an offensive Bisharp that's not Choice Scarfed, Sucker Punch could do a lot of damage to me. So if my Magnezone isn't healthy, then he could hit me really hard. He could also be running Shed Shell, which is pretty risky, because if I go for something like a Thunderbolt on an incoming Mamoswine or Flygon, then those two Pokemon are really powerful against my team, and I really do not have a great switch in, so that's very, very risky. Also, if I am not a choice set, because I don't want to get locked in certain moves, Bisharp could run something like Life Orb Low Kick, which is going to do a lot of damage. So it is a huge threat to my team, and Magnezone doesn't seem like it really fits that well, because to try to trap and eliminate Bisharp doesn't seem like the most practical. Actually, in practice, on paper it looks nice. Removing Bisharp is going to help me a lot, because Bisharp's a big threat, but it just in practice there's a good chance it won't be able to do that. So then further looking into the team, it seems like Tauros doesn't have the greatest matchup here, just because even though it hits his whole team really hard, he does have some pretty nice checks in things like Jellicent, which Tauros doesn't really have a move that could hit Jellicent hard enough, because its stab is normal type, and it does not have any other type of stab moves. It doesn't have a strong dark move or super effective move that could hit Jellicent really hard, like Crunch. Unfortunately, it does not get Crunch. So Jellicent is a pretty good check to that. If I want to run some type of choice set, like a Choice Scarf set to revenge a lot of his threats, which it can do pretty nicely, he's got things like Diancie that could wall me really well. Even Armaldo could take up hits or eat up hits from Tauros pretty well. And then he's got things like Scolipede that can naturally outspeed and then outrun after a single Protect. Same thing with something like a Scarf, Jolteon, or Tornadus T. Those can outspeed Tauros too. So overall, Tauros just does not. It doesn't seem like that good of a Pokemon. I was considering Assault Vest Tauros for this game, because it could lure things like the Tornadus and actually hit them really hard. Same thing with Jolteon. And then just generally outspeed a lot of his Pokemon and hit them hard, like Mega Medicham, Bisharp, Mamoswine. And then obviously things like, Amoonguss, Diancie, Flygon. But, if those things, any of those things except for like Amoonguss and Diancie happen to be Choice Scarf, then they could outspeed Tauros. Things like Medicham and Bisharp get strong priority to hit me hard anyway. And then also Tornadus could easily just run something like Superpower, which will not destroy Tauros, but hit it incredibly hard. So the fact that Tornadus can pull off physical sets pretty well kind of dissuades me from wanting to use Tauros. So as you can see, it's just looking pretty scary, because even something like Mega Medicham, I have a Slowbro on my team. Slowbro in OU is known to be one of the best Mega Medicham checks. But the thing is, he knows that I have a Slowbro. He could easily run, obviously he's going to run Thunder Punch, because Thunder Punch is a clean 2 KO even on physically defensive Slowbro, unless I run a Wakanberry. But either way, Wakanberry is kind of crappy, especially if I want Slowbro to check things like Mamoswine. So he can run things like Toxic. So basically, Medicham is an absolute menace. His overall priority is incredibly threatening to me. Torn T is also really threatening, because that Regenerator and high speed tier are very difficult for my team to handle, as it's a great check to things like Gengar. It can even check Mega Gardevoir to an extent, because it can come in and eat up a Hyper Voice and then hit hard with something like Iron Tail. It beats Infernape. It outspeeds even a Choice Scarf Magnezone. So Tornadus is incredibly threatening. I do have a Registeel though, so that is pretty nice. But overall, I just don't have switch-ins to things like Mamoswine, Bisharp, Medicham, Torn. All those things together really just pressure my team an absolute insane amount. So to be able to beat Riz it's going to be really tough. Like I said, I'm going to have to prep really well. And then the other thing that you don't really see necessarily at face value that just destroys me is Toxic Spike. Scolipede is another huge threat to my team, offensive, but even if it is, offensive or not offensive, if it carries Toxic Spikes and can set them up, that is incredibly threatening, because my only defoggers here are Shiftry and Dragonite. Dragonite and Shiftry both have a pretty useful role against the Sunflora team, and Defog doesn't fit on those sets. So the only really good hazard removal I have other than that is Rapid Spin Donphan, but he has a really nice check to that in Jellicent. So if he can stack hazards against me, especially Toxic Spikes, then it's going to be an incredibly uphill battle, possibly unwinnable. So with that being said, we will get right into my actual preparation. Okay, so now we are moving on to the team building portion where I go over exactly what I built and why. So starting off, we have my Get Shiftry. Just don't even mind the nicknames. These are just personal nicknames that I find to be enjoyable or funny or whatever. So I have my Shiftry here. Now, Shiftry has a pretty good offensive matchup against his team. As you see things like Mega Medicham, Bisharp, Scolipede, Mamoswine, Amoonguss, Jolteon, Diancie, Flygon, Armaldo, Jellicent, and Torrentee. It has ways to hit all these Pokemon at least neutrally, if not super effectively. And on this set, you can see I don't actually have Grass Stab, so I can't hit Diancie too hard. But Diancie isn't necessarily the best bring on his part because a lot of my Pokemon get Steel coverage, and it also just kind of loses momentum for his team. Like, Diancie doesn't really provide much. I mean, it can hit some of my Pokemon pretty hard, but I do have switch-ins to it, and I can, do certain things that would punish the Diancie. So it's not necessarily the best bring on his part, but regardless, it still should be scared of a Shiftry. And his reason of bringing Diancie shouldn't be to counter Shiftry, because obviously I can bring some type of grass move that'll hit it really hard. I don't have one here, but that's because I just don't think he's going to bring it, and even if he does, it's going to have to take a lot of hits throughout the course of the match, and this could be a good set to clean up his team, as I do pack the Sunny Day and the Chlorophyll, which I could set up on a bunch of different Choice Lock mons. He really likes Choice Scarf Bisharp. Choice Scarf, what's it called? Flygon could be pretty useful here. Choice Scarf Mamoswine could be pretty decent here. Even like a Specs Jolteon I could set up on. So the Shiftry set is definitely a big threat to him. It could also force things out like a weakened Torrentee, because Torrent is probably going to want to switch out expecting the Sucker Punch and preserve its health, as I can go right for a Sunny Day, as I am running Jolly Max Speed here because with a Life Orb, I can still hit his whole team really hard. And with the Jolly nature, I could speed tie with Mamoswine, which could be very important because there's a good chance I won't be able to set up Sunny Day this game. And regardless, Shiftry still puts in a lot of work because Sucker Punch just hits a lot of his offensive Pokemon quite hard. So I still have a good amount of speed control just with Sucker Punch. So I definitely want to go max speed, as if Mamoswine can creep me, if I'm not running max speed and Mamoswine creeps me, then I'll get hit with an Ice Shard first, which would be really unfortunate. I still could get hit with an Ice Shard first, even if he is running max speed, but at least it gives me the chance to hit him first, which is definitely cool. And he can't take me out with an Ice Shard from full if I wanted to just go for like a low kick and knock him out, say if I get a Sunny Day up. So low kick does kill the Mamoswine from full most of the time, and it easily destroys the Bisharp, so that's very, very cool. And yeah, this thing could also pick off things like Scolipede after rocks, which is nice with the Sucker Punch, and it's just a really big threat to his team. So now moving on, we have, that's going to go away every single time, whoops. We have my Slowbro, and with this Slowbro set, I decided to go with just a standard max defense, max HP with just 4 speed. The reason I went with 4 speed is because he has a Amoonguss, and if I want to, potentially just kind of creep that a little bit if he's running no speed, that could be, it could be nice. It's very situational, but it just could be nice. I didn't really have anything specific to do with that last EV, but I really needed the max defense and HP, just because with this spread, I could guaranteed take a high jump kick, an adamant high jump kick, plus Thunder Punch from a Mega Medicham, I believe, after rocks, with Protect. That's the thing, though. Like, I would need Protect to do that, and I had Protect on this initially, but I ended up changing it, and I'll let you guys know more why, but I'll just say right now it's for the Jellicent, because Jellicent is probably in the top 3 of big threats to my team on his team. It may not look it because he's got so many ridiculously powerful threats, but Jellicent is really, really tough for me to beat. And a well-played Jellicent could just put in so much work against me, so I needed some way to punish it, because it's a pretty good slow bro switch in general, and Thunder Waving it isn't necessarily as good. But Thunder Wave is very good against the rest of his team, which is why I decided to keep that on the set and not just go with Protect over Thunder Wave. So regardless, this set still has a good chance to live the high jump kick and Thunder Punch even after Stealth Rocks, but it's not guaranteed because I don't have the Protect. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm doing my best to try to counter the strongest Pokemon in the format, basically, in terms of power. So next we have my Spirit, the Infernape, and this has a really nice matchup against his team. I was thinking I would go Life Orb because it has Mach Punch priority, which is really pretty decently solid against a lot of his team, but it also gets things like Iron Fist, Thunder Punch, which could hit the Jellicent pretty hard. Iron Fist, Fire Punch, or just Flare Blitz, which hits his team really hard. Close Combat hits his team really hard. And like I said, the Mach Punch. So I had an SD set, I believe. It was either SD or it was just 4 attacks with Life Orb that really kind of broke open his team, and that his team couldn't really avoid a 2-hit KO with the moves I had. It was something along those lines, but I decided to switch to Choice Scarf because I didn't think he was going to bring Scarf Torrentee or Scarf Jolteon, especially Scarf Jolteon, because Jolteon can outspeed so many things on my team, even with a modest nature. So unless he wanted to go Modest Scarf, I really didn't think he'd go Jolteon just because it has so much power to put in a lot of work against my team if he wants to bring it, especially when it's not choiced. So I didn't think he would bring that. And Scarf Torrentee, even though that was definitely a possibility, I figured it has a lot more utility as either a Life Orb attacker that could just bust open holes in my team, or even an Assault Vest user to possibly check things like Gengar or Gardevoir. So a Choice Scarf Infernape outspeeds pretty much his whole team outside of a Jolly Scolipede at +1, and then the things like Torrentee and Jolteon, which I do not think he's going to bring Choice Scarf. So this set is pretty nice because it can serve as being a check to the Bisharp in terms of it can actually switch in pretty decently as long as it doesn't go for something like Psycho Cut. And you know, I decided to keep Mach Punch on the set just because that priority is really nice. And say, you know, I am a Scarf Infernape without any priority, and he has like a +2 Bisharp in front of my team will get destroyed by that Bisharp. And even though Infernape resists Sucker Punch, if I'm weakened at all, then I will not be taking a +2 Sucker Punch from an offensive Bisharp. So that's why Mach Punch is really important, because this will always be able to come in and knock out the Bisharp. So this also outspeeds things like Mamoswine and Moongus, Mega Medicham, Flygon, Armaldo, and Torrent hits all of these things quite hard. So this Pokemon could definitely put in a very good amount of work against his team, and it could also scout and get momentum for me with U-Turn, which is very nice because he is very afraid of this Pokemon, no doubt about it. It's one of the biggest threats to his team. So now moving on, we have my Show Stealer, my Registeel. Now this Registeel is going to be a pretty important player against his team because I really need this thing to help check both the Mamoswine and the Torn defensively, as I have a Shucker Berry to be able to take an Earthquake quite well. It also helps me take an Earthquake from things like Flygon too if he decides to bring that, but mostly for the Mamoswine, as I can get up rocks against it, which getting up rocks against Riz's team will just be amazing because he really does not have very good hazard removal, as Flygon isn't the best in terms of hazard removal, and I have a lot that could, you know, switch in or switch into or pressure Flygon. And Armaldo is a pretty crappy Rapid Spinner. It's really just not that great. It doesn't work too well against my team. But actually, no, that's not true. It does work decently well against my team, but it's just not that great in general. So getting up rocks will be very, very useful against his team. And also I can get some chip damage on something like Mamoswine, which could be really, really nice for some of my sweepers. So this set is designed to take even 2 Life Orb Focus Blasts from a Tornadus. A timid or hasty Tornadus, though. I wanted to calc Modest, but the problem is, number 1, I may not even be able to if I have full HP, and number 2, he should not bring Modest just because I do have things like Infernape and Gengar. So even Tauros, that he won't outspeed if he decides to go with a Modest nature. So that's why I just wanted enough to live 2 Focus Blasts, Life Orb Focus Blasts from a Torn. And then I decided to put the rest in defense because that will help me take hits from Bisharp, Mamoswine, Flygon, and yeah, that's basically it. But also I decided to put 1 in speed because he does have a Diancie, which is the same base speed as Registeel. So if I could outspeed the Diancie by 1, that means my Iron Heads will always go off first before an uninvested Diancie. So that's definitely cool there, because I really just didn't need that extra EV there. I decided I would just put one there and just put a good amount in defense, because I really do need Registeel taking hits from him all around. And Thunder Wave is just so good at slowing down his team, as the only thing that doesn't really mind the Thunder Wave are things like Jolteon and Mamoswine, which I have ways to punish because I have Iron Head for Mamoswine and a Shuckleberry, and Earthquake for the Jolteon. And Flygon also takes a decent chunk from Iron Head, but like I said, Flygon is one of the least of my worries on his team, so not too big of a deal. As now we will go into one of the key players in this match, which is my Spyro, my Dragonite. Now, this set is definitely a really, really cool set, one that works incredibly well against his team if, you know, he brings a team that I'm expecting, you know, one that could really capitalize on it. This set, while, you know, a pure offensive set, something like a normal Dragon Dance set or a Choice Banded set would be pretty nice against him, this set just really, really punishes a Pokemon that I'm pretty afraid of, which is his Amoonguss, because his Amoonguss, it has ways to punish pretty much everything on my team, because the only thing I have that can switch into a Spore that, you know, isn't holding safety goggles is Shiftry, but Shiftry can't hit it too hard with Knockoff and gets hit really hard with Sludge Bomb. It hits Slowbro really hard with Giga Drain. It hits Donphan really hard with Giga Drain. Infernape gets hit hard by everything, and Registeel can't do anything back to it. So the amazing thing about this set is that even if my multi-scale is not intact, I can substitute on an Amoonguss without any special attack EVs, and its Sludge Bomb cannot break my sub. 100% cannot break my sub with this spread. I'm a careful nature with just 148 SPDF, no HP, and it cannot break my sub, which is really cool. And he may not even bring Sludge Bomb, honestly. He may bring like not HP Ice, Clear Smog or something like that. He can bring HP Ice. If he does bring HP Ice, that would be very, very good. A very good bring on his part. But I wasn't really expecting that. And even so, even if he does have HP Ice, unless he has something else like Toxic or Foul Play, then as long as something else is spored, Dragonite could still set up on that and punish his team. So the reasoning behind this set is substitute, you know, obviously buys me some free turns to Dragon Dance. Fly hits his team really hard, so if he doesn't have, you know, moves like Protect, then Fly just hits his whole team really hard, except for Diancie. But Bisharp, you know, will take a really big chunk from Fly. Jolteon will take a huge chunk from Fly. And yeah, everything will get hit really hard by Fly, except for, like I said, Diancie, which I'm not too afraid of, and I have ways of wearing down pretty easily. So this set could really take advantage of him and prove to end up sweeping him too. And if he brings something like a Life Orb Scolipede, even if it does have Protect, I could stall that set out, unless he has like SD Rock Slide, or no, it's just SD in general. But if he's SD and Protect, then there, you know, should be another way I could take advantage of Scolipede, because it won't have enough coverage to hit my team as hard as it would like to. For example, it can't touch Registeel if it just brings two, you know, dual stabs. So that is pretty cool, as this Dragonite could definitely put in tons of work. Now, finally, we just have a nice defensive glue to the team, as here I have actually a Leftovers Donphan, which is the reason I didn't go Assault Vest, because you're probably wondering, you know, what did you really need Protect for here, instead of just running like Assault Vest and running another coverage move and even having more bulk that way. But the thing is, Mega Medicham is such a big threat that if I could get Donphan in, you know, on Mega Medicham and possibly bait it to go right for High Jump Kick, just because I don't have good switch-ins to High Jump Kick, even though I have Slowbro, he could always pack the Thunder Punch for it. If he just goes right for the High Jump Kick, then I go for Protect. Getting that damage on Mega Medicham would be huge, as that puts it in range of things like Sucker Punch from Shiftry right away, Donphan's Earthquake, like an Infernape Flare Blitz. So that would be amazing for me if I can get that damage off on it. And with this spread, I have enough to take hits from even like a Specs Jolteon. I could, you know, avoid a 2-hit KO from my Specs Jolteon HP Ice. And with this speed here, I could speed creep a uninvested Jellicent, which, like I said, is just so threatening to my team. So if I can knock that thing off, do anything to wear that thing down, would be amazing, as that most likely, you know, may want to come in and spin block me. So that is the team here, as basically I've gone over how I have something for everything on his team. Mega Medicham, I have Slowbro, and I have offensive checks. Bisharp, I have some bulky physical bulky physical defensive walls that can hit it hard, hit it really hard back, like Registeel, Donphan. I have things that can outspeed it if it's not scarfed, and hit it really hard like Shiftry, and I have probably the best offensive check anyone could really bring in a Scarf Infernape with Mach Punch. So I have a check for that. The Scolipede, like I said before, if it's a Life Orb set without Swords Dance, things like Dragonite could stall it out. Donphan could take hits from it decently, not that well because it's especially defensive. And if it doesn't have Earthquake, Registeel takes hits from it quite well. Mamoswine, I have ways to lure it, and Registeel. Shiftry speed ties it. Slowbro pretty much counters it. And then I have good offensive check, or a good offensive check in Scarf Infernape. Amoonguss, checked by a lot of my mons here, especially Dragonite really takes advantage of it, which is exactly what I needed it to because I didn't bring a ton for Amoonguss. Jolteon, I have the Donphan to counter it. Shiftry to check it pretty well because even though it can carry something like Signal Beam, it'll get hit really hard by Sucker Punch without a doubt, as Registeel also could check it pretty well. It's just really specially bulky and can hit it hard with Earthquake. Diancie, have a lot to pressure Diancie. Armaldo is, like I said, just not that great against my team in general, but Dragonite sets up on it. Scarf Infernape pressures it. Shiftry hits it pretty hard and outspeeds it. Same thing, Donphan hits it hard, so not too worried about that thing either, as it doesn't have any reliable recovery outside of Rest. Jellicent is, like I said, probably the biggest threat, so that is why I needed to throw Toxic on Slowbro, because I just have nothing for that Jellicent outside of Shiftry and Dragonite, which could potentially set up on it, but it's really not too reliable. And then Torrentee, I have Registeel to check it pretty well. Donphan could check a non-Life Orb variant decently well. And then I have things that could outspeed it, like Infernape and Shiftry with things like Sucker Punch. I have ways to slow it down with Thunder Wave. So yeah, that is my team. And now finally, we will get into the actual battle. Okay, finally we are here for the battling portion. I know it's been a while, so just bear with me here. I just really wanted to go in depth on everything that I do, to prepare for a game. All the things that go through my head, and then also what actually happens in the battle to show that I actually have some credibility here, and I could back up what I've been talking about. So here, it turns out that he brings a team pretty akin to what I thought he might bring, except I was expecting something like Bisharp to come, or Jolteon, or Amoonguss over something like Armaldo. But other than that, it is pretty similar to what I thought. These five are definitely, up there with being the biggest threats to my team. So we'll get right into the game as he leads with this Jellicent, and I'm just like, oh man, he picked the perfect lead because that is a Pokemon I have the least for. So actually, I'm like, I don't have a good switch into this Jellicent. I can't switch into Ape. I don't want to go into something like Shiftry on a Will-O-Wisp because that would be very bad for me, as that's a fully physically attacking Shiftry. So you know what? I'm just gonna bite the bullet. I'll take some damage here on Slowbro and just try to get a Toxic off on this thing, because wearing this down in any way would be great. As he goes right for a Shadow Ball, and that does quite a bit of damage. I'm like, I know I'm not especially defensive Slowbro, but that still did a lot. So I calced it. And it turns out that he is some type of specially attacking or specially offensive Jellicent. So I'm thinking he's either Trick Room or like just an offensive set. Like he could be Choice, but there's no way he's Specs. So Specs would have either killed me or almost killed me. So here I get the Toxic off on him. As now he switches into Scolipede. As I go into Registeel because I was expecting him to go for possibly another Shadow Ball or go into Scolipede, predicting me to want to go into something like Shiftry that resists the Shadow Ball. So here I go right into my Registeel, making the middle ground play, as here I could get up my rocks pretty easily, which is very nice. As now he goes right into Armaldo. Actually, no, I go right for the T-Wave. I go for the T-Wave because, while rocks would be nice, that Scolipede is such a huge threat. So if he just tries to set up hazards or do something kind of cheeky, punishing that thing with a Thunder Wave would be so incredible for me. So he switches out and makes a safer play. As here, I could just go for my rocks because I'm not too afraid of this Armaldo. I could beat it 1v1 as he goes for the Earthquake and he actually pops my Shuca Berry. So I wasn't really expecting that right away. I thought he would go for rocks or something, but he actually pops my Shuca Berry. So here I go for the Iron Head. I know I got the power the first time, but I was hoping that I'd get at least one power flinch here. So here I do end up getting the flinch. That is very nice for me. as you know, it's unfortunate for him, but that's, you know, yellow magic, and Ironhead does have a pretty high chance to flinch in 30%. So here he goes into his Mamoswine, and now I can no longer you know, avoid the 2 KO, or even avoid getting KO'd here from like a Life Orb Earthquake. So here I just have to go right into my Slowbro, or actually no, I go into Donphan. This is why I went Donphan here, because if I go Donphan and he goes right for Earthquake, then he's going to want to whatchamacall. Okay, so basically if I went into Donphan and he went for something like Earthquake, then that wouldn't have 2 KO'd me, and I could click Protect on the next turn to scout what his moveset was. If he wanted to go for something like Icicle Crash, at least that's good news. If he had a Life Orb, at least I would know that he has a Life Orb. And if he decided to go for something like Earthquake and he did have Icicle Crash, I could, you know, pivot around into something like Slowbro. So I figured all around it was probably my safest play, as something like a Life Orb Earthquake plus Freeze Dry could have been threatening to Slowbro. He also could have went for something like Toxic, and Slowbro just kind of loses momentum against something like Jellicent. So I figured I could go right into Donphan here, because if you wanted to go Stealth Rocks, then what I could do is just constantly spin, because I really don't want these rocks on my side of the field for my Dragonite. So I want to keep spinning these things off if that is what he decides to go for, which it is. So he does go for the rocks, as here he goes for the Earthquake. And that does not 2 KO me like I figured before, as now I could just go right for the whatchamacall. I believe I just go right for another Rapid Spin, because I just don't want those rocks up on the field. But now maybe he expected me to go into something like Slowbro, maybe Dragonite or Shiftry. I'm not sure. Maybe predicting the Earthquake. Not Dragonite though, because obviously he could have an Ice move. But I just go for another Rapid Spin, because I really do not want these rocks on the on my side of the field. So here I go for the Protect to scout the Torn Set, as he goes for the Grass Knot here. Now I do the calcs, and unless he's Life Orb, this Grass Knot has no chance to take me out. So I predict him to think I'm going to go into Shiftry, not Shiftry, Registeel. Why do I keep mixing up my names? I predict him to think that I'm going to go into Registeel, and like I said, if he is not Life Orb, then he will not have any chance to knock me out. And even if he is, it's a roll. So I'm like, you know what? I could just stay in here and get some damage off with a knockoff here, as he does go right for the Heat Wave. And it turns out he's not Life Orb. So even if he did go for Grass Knot there, it would not have knocked me out, as I knock off his Assault Vest there, which actually does not help me much in this match at all, because my only special attack is Slowbro Scald. So it is what it is. But anyway, I switch out here into my Registeel, predicting him to go for Grass Knot again here. And even if he did go for Heat Wave with the Assault Vest, I have, like, because he's Assault Vested, or not anymore, but he is not Life Orbed, I know that I can take 2 Heat Waves here if I go into Registeel. So I go right into Registeel here. And now I go for Ironhead, predicting him to go right into Mamoswine, because he knows that I have Thunder Wave. But he just decides to stay in here and get a little bit more damage off. So now I actually do just click Thunder Wave, I think. Or do I go for Ironhead? No, I go for another Ironhead. Why would I click Thunder Wave? As he actually reveals the Babiri Berry. So that was interesting there, as Ironhead wouldn't have killed, but it would have done, 50%, making this Mamoswine quite weakened. As here I switch out, because my Donphan here seems to be the least useful, and if he just wanted to get his rocks up there as I went for the Ironhead, that could have been bad, because Donphan cannot really spin anymore, considering he still has that Jellicent, because I'm weakened and he could go right into Jellicent on my Rapid Spin and just beat me 1v1, especially if he has some speed, and I know his is offensive. So if his outspeeds me, which there's a good chance that it does, and I go for Rapid Spin, it's going to outspeed me and be able to kill me with some type of offensive water move. So here I just go right into Donphan, because if he goes for Stealth Rocks, then I could click Protect to see if he has the Icicle Crash, and if he does not, or if he just doesn't go for it, there's a good chance that he doesn't have Icicle Crash. He may just have Ice Shard, because he may not want Crash. He may want something else like Freeze Dry or Knockoff for the Slowbro, maybe even Superpower for something like Registeel, if I was on like a balloon, or Magnezone on a balloon. So that is why I figured I could go into Donphan and click Protect.
Hey guys, thanks for watching.
If he does go for his rocks, and then determine whether I think I could spin on this thing or not. But it turns out he just goes right for the Earthquake, and that's fine, because now I can end up going down right here without him getting up rocks, which is very, very good for me. As now I go right into Infernape, and I could just go right for the Flare Blitz here because nothing on his team is immune to it. And because that Jellicent is offensive and it is poison, it's going to take a good chunk if it comes in, takes Stealth Rocks, and takes a Flare Blitz. So here I have to switch out because Infernape is very useful against his team. As I go right into Registeel, as I do go into Registeel and he gets the burn, so that kills any chance of me avoiding a 2-hit KO here and getting a little bit of chip damage off with Earthquake, but that doesn't matter too much. As now I go right into Shiftry, and I really, really wanted to go right for the Sunny Day here, but the problem is I can't KO Mega Medicham in one hit because I don't have something like Leaf Blade. Like something like Knockoff isn't going to kill him because he's not holding an item technically, and Sucker Punch will come close, but it won't knock him out. So here my safest play is to just go right for the Knockoff, as he makes a good play and goes right into his Medicham, which, like I said, will not go down to this. And now I switch out because I don't want to play games here with me going for something like Sucker Punch and he goes for Substitute or Bulk Up or something along those lines. As here I go right into Slowbro, and he makes a very aggressive play, going right for the Power Up Punch, not even fearing the Sucker Punch here. As now there's no way I could avoid a KO from Thunder Punch here, as that is what he goes for. And now I decide to go right into my Infernape because I am Choice Scarfed, and I could knock him out with the Flare Blitz here. As he goes for the Bullet Punch and gets a crit, that does a pretty good amount of damage, but that is fine because we are still able to live it and go for the Flare Blitz, which knocks him out. So here he goes in a Scolipede. Now, if this Scolipede is Jolly with, like an offensive set, like a Life Orb set here, that will be incredibly threatening to my team because my Registeel has gone down. So if he has Swords Dance and Protect, then he could possibly set up on my Dragonite, which could, eventually stall him out if he didn't have Swords Dance. And, the fact that Registeel is down, if he does have Swords Dance and no Earthquake, I don't have anything that could wall it. So unless he is a 3 attacks offensive set, then if he's Jolly, I could really lose here. So this is how threatening his team is to me, because even though I feel like I'm playing this quite well, he still has so many threats that are just, when they all stack up, it's almost too much for my team to handle unless my prep really is good enough. So here, if he is Adamant and I am Jolly Choice Scarf, I will outspeed and have the game in the bag. But if he is Jolly, then I can lose here. So he goes for the Protect, and now my heart just sinks. I'm like, it kind of all comes down to this. So I go for the Flare Blitz, and I do knock him out. So he turns out to be Adamant, which was definitely a bit of misprep on his part. And that's just why building is so important, guys. Like, that's a situation, or that's a scenario that you probably should spend time, spend enough time to foresee it is a possibility. And, a Jolly Infernape definitely is the better set against his team because he's got something like Mega Medicham, which if it was Jolly could outspeed an Adamant Infernape. Same thing with Flygon. So Jolly Infernape is definitely better than Adamant against his team. And, obviously Scolipede could get up a lot of boosts pretty easily because it could force things out, or it could just revenge something and then protect them the next turn. But on the off chance that something like this, a scenario like this arises where he needs to just go for one Protect and he can't get he can't risk a second one, a Jolly Nature would have been a lot more beneficial there. But I'll explain in a minute why that didn't really end up mattering as much as you would think. So here he goes into his Jellicent, and I can go right into Dragonite because at this point Infernape just wins. Here I avoid the burn, which means I could pretty much just win here. As here I just go right for the Dragon Dance as he goes into Mamoswine, and actually no, I go right for the Fly as it knocks out the Mamoswine from where it's at, and it'll do the same to the Jellicent as it actually reveals to be Scarfed as it hits me with that Ice Beam, and the Fly will be able to knock it out here. So this is the thing. If that was a Jolly Scolipede, then if he knocked out my Infernape there, and even if he did have Swords Dance, I still had a very good chance to win because this is what would happen. So it turns out he didn't have Swords Dance. He had 3 attacks. So the fact that he had 3 attacks means that I had a guaranteed win, which means, say he knocked out my Infernape, then I go into my Dragonite, and I can just substitute and roost constantly until he ends up wearing himself down, because I can't just sit there and Dragon Dance on him. I need to make sure that I stay healthy, because once I wear that thing down, then like you saw Dragonite was able to take on the Mamoswine and the Jellicent as an Ice Beam, even if I was had my multi-scale broken, couldn't kill me from full. And yeah, the Mamoswine probably did have Ice Shard, but because I was at full, or because I was up in the air flying, he couldn't hit me with it, obviously. So that's pretty cool, and he did not have Life Orb, so it was something that Dragonite could have lived for sure. And yeah, I would have been able to just stall him out, and regardless, I had Shiftry in the back, which beat his last 2 Pokemon. But also, if he did have Swords Dance, I still would have been able to win, just because just 1 Life Orb hit from Scolipede after those Stealth Rocks would have put it in guaranteed range of a Shiftry Sucker Punch. So say he did knock out my Dragonite, Shiftry could come in. He would basically need to protect or click Swords Dance 8 times in a row, or just, beat me in 8 Mind Games in a row to avoid getting knocked out with the Sucker Punch. And then Shiftry outsped his Mamoswine. He ran an Adamant Mamoswine, and also he had a 4 attacks Scarf Jellicent, so I would have been able to just Sucker Punch the Jellicent and knock that out as well. So overall, that was a really, really good game. It was a lot closer than the score turned out to be in 3-0, but it was one of those games where, like I said, I had to prepare, not necessarily perfectly, because something perfect is always subjective, but I had to prepare incredibly well, because that matchup was so tough that even though I played well and prepped well, it still came down to, it almost came down to just what his nature was. Yes, I still would have won, even if he did have the Jolly nature, most likely, but it almost came down to just what his nature was, and that just goes to show why team building is so important, because he would have had a much better chance if he had the right nature, and if I didn't prepare correctly or just really well on my part, then I would have had no shot in this game. So that is the first episode of Building with Brawlhalla or the Elite. Still not sure on the name. I know this was a very long video. I hope you guys didn't get too bored here. I just wanted to make sure it was a really in-depth video. Definitely for the more high-level Draft League players looking to get better. It could definitely help the more newcomers. Can't even speak English, but it could definitely help the newcomers as well. But I think that overall, because I go really in-depth with it, it's just more for a more competitive audience that has some experience, that has a lot of skill. But like I said, it could definitely be interesting to everybody. I hope so. So definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments. I had a lot of fun making this. I really enjoy putting time into building and playing these games, because I don't know, I just feel like it has a nice refreshing take on playing Pokemon rather than the standard Smogon tiers or even VGC metagames, where a lot of the things are just kind of set in stone in the metagames, and it's really hard to be creative. So this will allow you to play around bad matchups way, way better than it would in the other tiers. Like I said before, I didn't even need to play crazy aggressive here. I just made some middle ground plays, made some safe plays for the most part, and was still able to pick up the win against such a terrible matchup. So that is why team building is so important, and something that I really, really love and cherish so much. So like I said, all those suggestions or feedback in the comments will be greatly appreciated. I really hope you guys enjoy the video, and thank you so much for watching. And most importantly, have yourselves a fantastic day. Later.